Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of The County Seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. Today we are going to be talking about equality in the marketplace. That's a funny thing for a county show, but really it's an important part of everyday lives. Think about it. When you go to the gas station and you order 5 gallons of gas, are you getting 5 gallons of gas? Well, there is an agency in the state that makes sure that all of our transactions are fair and honest, even if it's an unintentional error. Let's find out about weights and measures from Terry Wood.
We all know how it works in the grocery store. It's about $4 for a pound of ground beef, about $3 for a gallon of milk, and maybe 70 cents for a pound of apples. Those are weights and measures we're all used to dealing with on a daily basis, but how do you know it's accurate? Well, the Utah Department of Food and Agriculture wants to make sure it is. That's why they're in charge of the state's weights and measures. They're making sure you get what you pay for.
I don't think a lot of people realize that a lot of the commodities they buy, including gasoline, groceries, produce, meat, pretty much everything that's consumable commodity, we have a hand in inspecting the scales or the devices used to measure or dispense those commodities.
The Utah Department of Agriculture and Food is known primarily for inspecting and verifying that the food we eat is safe. That's only part of their mandate, though. They also make sure you're getting what you pay for. It's a service that extends from the farm to your fork, including the checkout stand.
Our Weights and Measures Department inspects a lot of things. Not only do they standardize weights, but they check fuel dispensers, including gasoline, diesel, propane. This year we'll be implementing compressed natural gas, or CNG. We check liquid propane. We also check scanners in grocery stores to ensure that their devices are working correctly. We check large capacity scales, small scales.
Today, we followed food and ag supervisors on an inspection of a more volatile commodity.
Primarily, they want to make sure that the customer is getting what they're paying for.
This inspection requires a fill-up with a special measuring device that measures out exactly 5 gallons of gas.
001, so that's close to 0. We level it out, check the reading. We read the bottom of the meniscus, and it's reading +1.
The numbers denote cubic centimeters, about the same volume as a shot glass. If the pump is within 6 cubic centimeters of the 5-gallon mark, it passes the test.
They also check the devices to ensure that they're properly sealed, that they haven't been tampered with, and they'll also look at the condition of the equipment to make sure that it's in proper repair. And we'll let the operator know of any deficiencies that we find. But for the most part, industry does a great job.
Inspectors will also take fuel samples for further testing.
Basically, when we take fuel samples here at the lab, we analyze it for octane, to make sure the customer is getting the octane rating that they're paying for. We'll check it for ethanol to ensure that the standards are correct. And we'll check the flash point for diesel fuel to make sure that the diesel fuel is adequate for diesel engines. To put it in a nutshell, people needed a means by which to trade with one another and make sure that they were getting a fair and equitable deal. And Weights and Measures has been around for that long.
How you doing today? You know, since the time of Archimedes, and maybe even before, people have been measuring their transactions. They want to make sure everybody's getting a fair deal. It really doesn't matter whether you're dealing in pounds and gallons or bushels and pecks. Everybody wants to make sure they're getting what they paid for. In fact, let me pay for this now. For the County Seat, I'm Terry Wood.
Thanks, Terry, for that report. You know, weights and measures and calibration and protection of the marketplace has not always been part of the Department of Food and Ag. As a matter of fact, it used to be a function of the state auditor's office, but that changed several decades ago. And the funny thing is, nobody knows exactly why. But we will take up a conversation with our panelists and find out more about the challenges of keeping everything square and level in the marketplace when we come back.
There's a little place on a Utah map where I was raised, where my heart's at, where the sagebrush grows wild and high, and the stars come out at night. Oh, there ain't nothing like being raised in the basin with a Ute reservation, skiing starvation, that Duchesne County life.
Too often we find ourselves in shoes like these, or these. Wouldn't it be nice to change into something more like this, or this? How about these? Put on whatever shoes you prefer and come to Beaver County. We have exactly the adventure you need to put under them. So the next time you want to change out of these, come to Beaver County where you can jump into a pair of these. Beaver County, Utah. Lace up for adventure.
The Utah Farm Bureau began as a collection of farmers supporting each other to raise the food we enjoy. Today, Farm Bureau membership encompasses everyone, whether ranchers, growers, or just everyday folks like you and me. Members enjoy discounts on items like vehicles and ATVs, or insurance that's very affordable. You don't have to be a farmer to join, and dues are small, but together we make a big difference in keeping our food supply local and abundant. Join Utah Farm Bureau.
Welcome back to the county seat. Today we are talking about weights and measures, part of the function of the Department of Agriculture and Food here in Utah. Joining us for our conversation is Travis Waller, who's the Director of Regulatory Services, and that's a division of the department. We also have Dave Davis joining us, who is the President of the Utah Food Association and also President of the Retail Merchants Association. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today.
It's good to be with you.
Excellent. Well, let's talk a little bit about the consumer side of this agency. In a day's work, what would be a typical field day in the Department of Ag?
Under our weights and measures program, our inspectors go out and inspect a variety of things, including gas pumps, grocery store scanners, scales, both small scales and large scale capacity, propane meters, just to name a few.
Basically, is that any commodity that is traded in the marketplace?
That's correct. Any commodity that's sold by weight or a measure of some sort is regulated within the program.
From your standpoint, as representing the retailers, when they see the guys coming in to do weights and measures, how do most of your retailers look at that?
Well, that's a great question, and you know, it was Ronald Reagan that famously said that the scariest words in the English language is, "Hello, I'm here from the government and I'm here to help you." But I can say that our retailers have a very positive and good relationship with the Weights and Measures Department. We sell a lot of commodities, and a lot of commodities that have specific price points are sold by weight. Many of our stores are, selling produce items and things like that are dependent on weight. We have convenience stores that are out there selling gas, and we want to make sure that consumers are dispensed the appropriate amount of product based upon what they're paying for. And so I would say that as a general rule, even though this may be a bit counterintuitive, we see the Department of Agriculture and Food and the Weights and Measures Department particularly as our partners in helping us to make sure that our consumers are getting the goods and services that they're paying for.
This just seems as I sit here and calculate this in my head, this just seems overwhelming to me. I'm thinking there have to be 2,000 just in the Salt Lake area, 2,000 convenience stores and probably 300 grocery stores, and you know, you start adding it up, it seems to me like you can only get there once every 10 years. I mean, how long does it take? How long does it take the department to cycle through and check all the weights and measures?
You know, funny you should mention that. It really is a challenge to get out to all the retail establishments, grocery stores, convenience stores, fuel stations. We try to focus on different areas at certain times of the year. The fuel stations, when it's fair weather, we're able to visit more of those facilities. In the wintertime, we switch gears and we might focus more on retail. But it is a challenge. Our goal is to visit a fuel station at minimum every 2 years.
So, Chet, let me put this in context for you.
Please do. I'm having a hard time grasping it.
From a retail perspective, just to sort of illustrate the enormity of the task that weights and measures have. You could go into a large super center, and there might be 100,000, upwards of 100,000 different UPCs or barcodes in that single retail facility. And part of their job is to make sure that when you go into that store as a consumer, that if it says on the shelf that you're paying $2.99 for that item, when you take that up front and it scans at the scanner, that you're getting charged $2.99 for that. So our hats are off to the department, because the enormity of their task can sometimes be overwhelming. And that's why I think that it's key that there's this partnership between the retail community and the Department of Agriculture and Food.
You know, to me, this is pretty much like trying to comprehend how many stars there are in the galaxy. I mean, it's just mind-boggling.
It's an undaunting task. When our inspectors do go out to grocery stores and check prices and weights on commodities, obviously we can't check them all, but we'll select a few items throughout the store. We'll walk the store and just try to look for red flags on items.
How do you a red flag? Well, I mean, how do you constitute a red flag? What would go through your mind saying, this ought to be checked out?
We'll check various commodities such as the meat case, if it's sold by the pound. We'll check the scale, make sure that it's accurate, but and we'll check to see that items that are supposed to be checked by weight are advertised by weight and not by each.
When somebody has a problem, what do they do?
Each pump should have a sticker on it that indicates when the pump was last checked, and also on the sticker is our phone number. So if a consumer feels as if something is wrong, they can call us and we will go out and investigate that pump or that facility.
Where else will we see those stickers?
You can find these stickers on scales, grocery store scales, any type of device that's used to measure a commodity that's sold in the marketplace.
And I would add to that as well and encourage the consuming public out there, if you ever have an issue with pricing or you have questions about the dispensing of fuel, these types of things, I would always encourage you to go to your retailer first and to bring that to their attention. I know that our retailers put systems in place to try to make sure that pricing is accurate. But again, they have an enormous task as well, where they're dealing with hundreds of thousands of items. You have sale items that are going on, coming off of sale. But I would encourage the public, go see your retailer. These retailers are in the business of making you, the consumer, happy. And I think that you'll find a pleasant resolution most of the time when you take it to your retailer.
Typically, when I go to grocery stores that I frequent, if something was on the shelf and I just say, hey, I thought that was, because I'll catch it sometimes, they'll fix it right there. So that's probably pretty good advice. We're going to shift here in just a few seconds after a commercial break. We're going to go to the industry side, as we've now talked about the consumer side, and look at the industry relationship and how the Division of Weights and Measures works with industry. So we'll be right back here on the County Seat. Stay with us.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah Valley? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo Rivers. No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
ATV? Check. Four-wheel driving? Check. Bouldering? Check. Mountain biking? Check. Hiking? Check. River rafting? Check. Adventure is about more than just crossing activities off of a list, but hey, if you can find a place that gives you everything you're looking for, all the better. In Emery County, you'll find the San Rafael swell, trails, lakes, and the small-town hospitality you're looking for. San Rafael Country, in the heart of Utah. Visit us and check something off your list.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking about weights and measures and how you can have great confidence when you shop for really anything that you are getting what you paid for. Let's continue our conversation. You represent basically most of who he checks through your association, Dave. So how is that working relationship? You alluded to it earlier, maybe compared to some of the other states around here. What is the climate for working back and forth with weights and measures, and basically what's the attitude of the retailers?
We represent a wide variety of retailers, from grocery stores and convenience stores to big box electronic stores, and so we run a pretty wide gamut. And Travis and his team see us on a regular basis. They're in and seeing us. I also have the opportunity in my capacity to be able to interface with my counterparts around the country and talk about the relationships that they have with their weights and measures departments and other regulatory agencies. And I just have to say, I feel blessed and lucky to be here in the great state of Utah. We have what I think is a very constructive relationship. That doesn't mean that there isn't tension from time to time, as there probably should be between a regulator and a regulated entity. There is some tension sometimes, but I've never felt like the Department of Weights and Measures or that division has ever wanted to play the gotcha game with our retailers, where they're looking for opportunities to make our lives more difficult, to make it more difficult to sell goods and services to the consuming public out there. So I feel very lucky to have this relationship, and my counterparts around the country are not so lucky, and there can be a real adversarial relationship.
If I were a retailer, I would want to know, because I wouldn't know how to fix it. I'd want to know if something was askant. So I would look at this regulatory function and say that's good, because if somebody's buying a pound of apples, I want them to get a pound of apples. I don't want to be giving a half a pound of apples away, and I don't want to short them, because reputation is important to me. But I want to show the magic pump. Okay, here's how things can go awry, and I think from the egregiousness of what you're about to see here, notice that I don't think that was an intentional jump of, what, $10, $15 instantaneously on a pump. When something like that happens, and you report it to a retailer, how hard is it for them to fix that? I mean,
it can be difficult at times. It depends on the location in the state and how long it would take for a service technician to get out to that facility. We try to work with the industry and not beat up on them. If we find an issue that's severe, such as the pump jumping, we'll ask that they shut the pump down until it can be fixed, and then we'll give them 10 business days before we return and do a follow-up inspection. And for the most part, the retailers are very cooperative, and we have a good relationship with them.
And I think that cooperation is born out of a long history of dealing with a group that has been reasonable in nature. And I've always said reasonableness begets more reasonableness. And I think that our retailers are feeling comfortable that, again, we're not playing the gotcha game here. Travis and his team try to do a good job of educating, helping us to be better in delivering goods and services to the consumers out there.
And I might add, from our standpoint, it's easier to develop these positive relationships and make a phone call rather than it is to go through the regulatory process. And with many of our industry partners, we have such a relationship where we can just call them up and let them know of any issues that we see.
If they're uncooperative, you always have that in your quiver of arrows, so to speak.
Yeah, we have that in our toolbox. If someone is uncooperative, then we take that route.
Well, not only that is it more efficient, it's better for the taxpayer too. The regulatory process can be a long, drawn-out, and expensive process for both the taxpayer and the retailer. So I think that this positive relationship that we've had over the years has borne fruit for the consumer and the taxpayer out there as well.
Well, generally, it goes unnoticed by most of us, I'll have to admit. So, good for you. One last quick question.
Yeah.
How big is your staff?
We have 15 inspectors on our weights and measure staff, including a fuel lab technician.
That just seems like it's almost impossible to cover the whole state with that. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that one. We'll be right back with a follow-up and our conclusion here on the county seat. We'll look for you right after the commercial break.
There is a place where looking out means looking in, where an impression lasting only a few seconds will be imprinted on a life forever, where courage is forged and innocence rediscovered, where remembering is rewarding and forgetting unforgettable. There is a place where truth is felt and where seeing is believing. There is a place.
149 million years in the making, dinosaurs once roamed this land. Now they're found at the Dinosaur National Monument. Let's take you beyond the bones. We call it Dinosaur Land. You'll find it offers adventures and sights not seen anywhere else in the world. Come to Dinosaur Land, Vernal, Utah. You'll want to stay forever. The dinosaurs did.
There's more to life than the 9 to 5. There's more to experience than rush hour traffic. And there's more to see than the view from your window. In Davis County, we have over 500 miles of trails to satisfy the most avid bikers and hikers, taking you beyond the ordinary and into a natural world. Pick up your free trails and bikeways maps at any bike shop or city office in Davis County and discover what you've been missing. Davis County, Utah. Eat, stay, play. Learn more at playindavis.com.
All local products have a story of magical places, real people, and delicious recipes spanning generations. So go ahead and discover flavors you've never tasted and friends you never knew you had. Utah's own Discover Local Food.
Welcome back to the county seat. We've been talking about weights and measures and how government regulation from the Department of Agriculture and Food works with industry to make sure we're getting what we pay for. But I don't know, you might be like me. I've had a real hard time getting my head around this entire show, that there are millions of barcodes and things to be measured, and there's a staff of 15 that try and hit some every 2 years, and something that could go wrong in between. So how is it we have such confidence?
So I think that one thing that's important for the consumers to understand is the fact that our retailers have staff that are exclusively dedicated to making sure that pricing and weights and measures are done accurately within their individual stores. So we have people that are spending a fair amount of time all day, every day, if you will, for those scanning folks, that's what their primary job is. And I know that they have partnered with Travis and his team as well to help lift that burden of the enormity of the task.
Yeah, in fact, we work closely with industry to train them on how to accurately calibrate those pieces of equipment and test them. In fact, we certify a lot of the equipment that they use we compare them with our standards and give them a certification to enable them to do their jobs more efficiently as well.
So generally, if you're dealing with reputable retailers, we can have some assurance that it's not just that check every 2 years that you do, that there's been some interaction with the weights and standards generated by the retailer in the interim period.
Absolutely.
And I think that really goes to our discussions previously about the idea of a partnership, a partnership between government and the private sector. And that's really a model that I think that folks around the country should take a look at. How can, rather than being the heavy hand of government that we're here to help you, how do I partner with my private sector? And I think this has really been driven from a leadership perspective, by our governor, by our Commissioner Adams in the Department of Agriculture and Food, and they have set the culture for this.
You know, it used to be barcodes, and then QR codes showed up. How hard is it for your department to stay up with technology?
It could be difficult at times, but for the most part, we stay up on it. Just recently, the legislature approved for the department to hire a compressed natural gas inspector. As you're aware, compressed natural gas is becoming more of a popular commodity, and we did not have the means to test those facilities, but the legislature this year gave us funding to purchase equipment and a full-time employee.
Thank you for joining us. Appreciate all of the input you've given us. Thank you for inviting us into your homes each and every week. We appreciate the opportunity to share what we're discovering about local government in the state of Utah. It's important for you to be involved because local government is where your life happens. So as always, I remind you, become part of the solution by being engaged. We'll look for you next week on the County Seat. Be sure to check out our social media during the week for other great tips and little bits of news. We can keep you updated there.